Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 294. Recently, we've been discussing how the Public Corruptions Unit is in charge of the Ghislaine Maxwell case, just like they were in charge of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Now, usually, a case like this that involves human trafficking and crimes as such as these would be handled by the Violent Crimes Unit. But instead, it is the Public Corruptions Unit which is handling the Ghislaine Maxwell case, just like they did previously with the Jeffrey Epstein case. Now, I said when we were talking earlier about this that, in my opinion, the reason for that was in Florida. I think that what occurred in Florida with the prosecutors, with Kersher and Villafana and the rest of them, was, and I'm not even being hyperbolic here, okay? I believe it was criminal, their conduct, their behavior, what they did, the way they violated the rights of these survivors. And I think that is why this Public Corruptions Unit is involved. Now, of course, there are other public figures who were caught up in Jeffrey Epstein's web. We know that, from Bill Clinton to Donald Trump to Steve Mnuchin to you name it. I mean, you go and look at the people he was donating to, and it'll make your eyes bulge out of your head. So we know that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell both were very intimate with public officials or those who were on the dole of the public. So it could be that as well, or it could be a mixture of both. But I just have a funny feeling that Florida is going to be the epicenter for that. And tonight's article is going all the way back to 2015. It's about when the judge was unsealing documents in the Jeffrey Epstein case and how more came out about the prosecution and how things were going behind the scenes, emails, etc., etc. So we're going to jump into this article from Politico, and we're going to see what sort of context that this can add to the story 5 years later. Now that we're sitting with our Monday morning quarterbacks caps on, we can take a look back now 5 years later and see what sort of context this adds to what we're talking about now. Because it is very obvious that what occurred in Florida is legitimately criminal. And the more articles that we read and the more information that we add to the catalog, the more convinced I become that this Public Corruptions Unit is going to be focusing big time on Villafana, Kersher, and that whole entire office. This article is from the Politico. The headline, Judge Unseals More Details in Jeffrey Epstein Underage Sex Lawsuit. Authored by Josh Gerstein. And this article was published on 7/7 of 2015. So remember, we're jumping back in the DeLorean, right? We're taking a trip back in time for this article. This isn't something that just came out. This is to add some more context. A federal judge in Florida has released new details about high-powered lawyers for billionaire investment manager, pedophile, child abuser, sex offender, investment manager Jeffrey Epstein, who managed to delay and water down victim notifications that federal prosecutors sent to more than 30 underage girls with whom Epstein allegedly had sex. And again, I've been very clear how I feel about Epstein's team of lawyers from back then. And don't get me wrong, it's not for defending their client. That's their job. It's for the way they went about it, right? It's for the way that they achieved their goals with a helping hand from the prosecution. This was a stacked deck against these survivors from the jump, from the time Jeffrey Epstein abused them to the time they walked into the courtroom in Palm Beach. From the grand jury only hearing evidence from one girl, to the prosecutors using their MySpace profiles and social media profiles against them. All of these people that were involved in the prosecution in Florida in an official capacity must be investigated. Attorneys for Epstein fought for years to keep the substance of the negotiations leading to the unusual plea deal secret from lawyers for the alleged survivors and from the public. However, a federal appeals court ruled last year that the discussions were not legally privileged. And we've seen this a lot in the Jeffrey Epstein case. It takes some time, years in some cases, but a lot of this stuff is starting to come out and come into light. A lot of it is starting to be unsealed. And it looks like it's happening in like 5-year intervals, right? But as we have seen in Judge Preska's courtroom, she plans on getting this stuff released as fast as possible with going through the protocols that she has put in place. But back in 2015, remember, there wasn't all this hubbub around Jeffrey Epstein. People weren't really focused on what was going on. So a lot of this stuff went under the radar. Of course, there were some outlets that were covering it, and it is news, so there was, some coverage of it. But there certainly wasn't a microscope on the situation like there is now. So when we go back and we look at this in hindsight like we're doing tonight, and we get to see what was actually occurring back then and how it relates to the story now, it's pretty interesting to see how the pieces start to fit together. Newly disclosed excerpts of emails and letters exchanged by prosecutors in Epstein's defense and posted here. There's a hyperlink in the article. You can obviously go and check that out and read these emails and see for yourself what was said. Appear to indicate that federal authorities and Epstein's lawyers worked to limit information judges might receive about aspects of the deal, which involved Epstein pleading guilty to a state charge in exchange for a guarantee not to prosecute him in federal court. So again, it goes to what I was talking about, what we've been talking about, what we all have known. Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers were able to finagle things to such an extent that they kept the information that the judges received to a limited capacity. Epstein and his lawyers were able to finesse this situation, and they were able to get a plea deal that I haven't been able to find another plea deal like this. Known and unknown co-conspirators? Are you kidding me right now? Andy, who wasn't further identified in the filing, recommended that some of the time issues be addressed only in the state agreement so that it isn't obvious to the judge that we are trying to create federal jurisdiction for prison purposes. Assistant U.S. Attorney Marie Villafana wrote to Epstein lawyer Jay Lefkowitz in a September 19, 2007 email. So why is Marie Villafana writing to Epstein's lawyer Jay Lefkowitz about standard language regarding resolving all criminal liability and mention co-conspirators? But she'd prefer not to highlight other crimes, and she wants to make sure that the time issues are addressed, and it's only a state agreement. And why is she even conducting these sorts of conversations with the people she's supposed to be prosecuting? What is she, part of the defense team? I will include our standard language regarding resolving all criminal liability, and I will mention co-conspirators. But I would prefer not to highlight for the judge all of the other crimes and all of the other persons that we could charge. Maybe we could set a time to meet. If you want to meet off campus somewhere, that is fine. I will make sure that I have all of the necessary decision makers present or on call as well. Now, let me ask you folks a question, okay? You think you'd get this treatment? You think that you or your family or your loved ones would have Marie Villafana on the phone with your lawyer talking about let's meet off campus and figure out a way how we could finesse this by the judge without naming other co-conspirators and other people we could have charged? Why didn't you charge them, Marie Villafana? I really hope that this public Corruptions Unit kicks in Marie Villafana's door while she's sleeping in the middle of the night and arrests her. That's what I hope. Another email a few days later discusses the large number of individuals the FBI considered victims and continuing uncertainty about whether some of the young women were under the age of consent. I wanted to tell you that I have compiled a list of 34 confirmed minors. Villafana, the prosecutor, wrote to Lefkowitz, Epstein's lawyer. So why is she telling him that she has a list of 34 confirmed minors? Why is she showing her hand? Why is she telling the defense about any sort of information they may have? What are they doing behind the scenes? What sort of deal are they working on? And why? There are 6 others whose names we already have, who need to be interviewed by the FBI to confirm whether they were 17 or 18 at the time of their activity with Mr. Epstein. And again, I don't really care if they were 18, all right? If they were coerced into this and they were trafficked in this trafficking ring and passed around to other people and all of this shit occurred, I don't care if they're 18. They're human beings. That shouldn't even matter, all right? Of course, crimes against minors are always the bottom of the barrel, lowest of the low. But what, are we just going to ignore if somebody was 18 or above if they were trafficked by this guy? All these claims that are made need to be looked at. All of them need to be investigated. That is what I have always called for here on this podcast. Equal justice under the law. Equal for us, equal for them. Everybody gets their day in court. In a December 2007 letter, the prosecutor acknowledges some notifications of alleged victims, but says they were sent after the U.S. Attorney's Office signed the plea deal and halted for most of the women at the request of Epstein's lawyers. Must be nice. Must be nice. So they sign this draconian-ass plea deal agreement, right? They get this non-prosecution agreement on paper. After it's on paper, they get notifications from more victims. After they've already signed the plea deal, and they get them halted for Epstein's lawyers. Do you think anybody else is getting that sort of treatment? You think El Chapo's lawyers got that treatment? El Chapo's people got that treatment? How about John Gotti? How about Gas Pipe Casso? Why would Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell get such preferential treatment? Now, that's a rhetorical question, by the way, folks. Three victims were notified shortly after the signing of the non-prosecution agreement of the general terms of that agreement, Villafana wrote, again to Lefkowitz. You raised objections to any victim notifications, and no further notifications were done. She's admitting right here in this article that they broke the Victims' Crimes Act. They didn't follow through on their end of the bargain of letting the survivors know what they were up to. They had to let every single one know, and they didn't do that. And instead, since Lefkowitz and Epstein's lawyers raised objections, they decided not to go further with any more notifications. All because they were asked by Epstein and his team of scummy-ass, smarmy, involved lawyers. After Epstein pleaded guilty in June 2008 to 2 state felony charges relating to prostitution, 2 women who claimed to have been victims of the money mogul filed suit against the federal government, claiming that prosecutors violated the Crime Rights Act by failing to consult with them about the plea deal, failing to disclose its terms, and failing to keep victims informed about important developments in the case. The suit asks that the non-prosecution deal be rescinded. And now, remember, this is the deal. This is what we've been talking about. That's in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. This is what they're looking at right now. And again, I think that there is a lot of trouble on the horizon for the prosecutor's office and those who were involved in getting Jeffrey Epstein this deal. Just from the emails alone, folks, it's damning for Villafana and Krischer and the whole entire prosecutor's office in the state of Florida. Never mind the federal prosecutors that were involved. In the court filing unsealed Monday, the alleged survivor's lawyer, Bradley Edwards and Paul Cassell, contend that the correspondence backs up their view that the prosecution and Epstein's defense worked together to frustrate the legal rights the survivors should have been accorded. It's obvious what they were doing, especially now when we look back in hindsight. We've had all this time for things to settle in. We've had all this time for new information to appear. And we've had all this time to put the pieces together. The exchanges demonstrate that the survivors' allegations of a conspiracy between the government and Epstein's attorneys to conceal the existence of a broad, non-prosecution agreement are not mere speculation, but appear to be well supported, Edwards and Cassell wrote. They added that one email shows the parties negotiating to keep the judge in the dark about the full nature of the plea arrangement, as well as keeping the survivors, i.e. the girls, in the dark about the plea agreement until after Epstein's plea. It also shows the prosecutors setting up a meeting with the defense attorneys that would be off campus, i.e. outside the ordinary course of business. So why would they want to meet off campus? Why couldn't they just meet at the prosecutor's office? Why can't they sign and do whatever sort of deal that needs to be done there? Why do you have to meet somewhere else, somewhere where there's no surveillance, where nobody has a record of you coming and going? It looks shady as hell. And when you add it into what we've been dealing with these scumbags, I don't know about you, but I don't believe that they were just meeting off campus for a nice cup of coffee. Give me a break. Epstein's lawyers, who included at various times such heavyweights as former independent counsel Kenneth Starr and Harvard law professor Alan, I kept my underpants on Dershowitz, argued that the law did not require federal prosecutors to make any notifications because the women were not victims of any crime being charged in a federal court. Again, this is what I talk about and why I get so fired up. The loopholes have to go. These guys never get off because they're innocent. They get off because there are loopholes for them to navigate. And these same very loopholes are the ones that are put into place and onto the books by their buddies that they're rubbing elbows with at the golf club. See the problem here yet, folks? And you see why it's so crucial that in your local elections, you send people to Washington, D.C., that are not scummy? Epstein was ultimately sentenced to 18 months in jail on the state charges. He served 13 before being released. While Judge Kenneth Mara made more information about the episode public Monday, he also dealt a setback to the women and attorneys pursuing the victims' rights suit. Mara turned down the bulk of their requests for the U.S. Attorney's Office's internal files and memos about the case. In his new ruling, posted here, there's a hyperlink for you to follow, the judge said most of that material included draft federal indictments should remain confidential as attorneys work product or secret grand jury material. However, Mara said the alleged survivors were entitled to a few documents that appeared to have been shared with Epstein's defense team or were largely factual in nature. Now, remember, this stuff has all been sent to the 11th Circuit Court. So the 11th Circuit will take a look at all of it. They'll figure out, what's going to occur, what's going to be released, if anything's going to be released, if this plea agreement's going to be tossed. So that's definitely a big one. That's one we definitely have to keep our eyes on, and we have to keep digging into that and make sure we don't get backtracked there, because it's very important going forward in this case. A spokeswoman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Southern Florida declined to comment on the ruling and the newly unsealed plea details. Federal prosecutors have previously said they agreed to the deal to spare survivors the need to testify and to ease their ability to get financial compensation from Epstein. They might want to run that by the survivors. Might want to ask the girls if it was okay with them, because, according to the law, that's what they had to do. And honestly, it's just the morally correct thing to do. If I was prosecuting a case like this, there's zero chance I wouldn't be in contact with the people who were abused by this man, to be on the same wavelength with their lawyers. And if I think that I could get a prosecution and go for the gusto and put this son of a bitch away for the rest of his life, you better damn well believe that is where I'd be going. Not this little shitty ass 18-month, 13-month served state sentence. What a bunch of garbage. A lawyer for Epstein, Roy Black, did not respond to a message seeking comment. Epstein's prosecution and the legal morass in which he is still enmeshed have attracted unusual notoriety because of his wealth as well as his ties to well-known politicians, professors, and celebrities. Earlier this year, a woman seeking to join the victims' rights suit and identified as Jane Doe 3, we know who that is now, alleged in court papers that she was kept as a sex slave by Epstein and forced to have sex with prominent men, including Dershowitz and Britain's Prince Andrew. Both men flatly denied the allegations. In April, Mara struck the lurid claims from the court record and denied Jane Doe number 3's request to join the lawsuit. Republicans and conservatives have also taken a keen interest in President Bill Clinton's connections to Epstein, hoping to make trouble for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's presidential bid. Press reports have noted that Bill Clinton, as well as actors Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker, used Epstein's private 727 to travel to Africa in 2002 for a Clinton Foundation tour of AIDS fighting and developmental work. Flight logs filed in connection with another lawsuit show at least 10 journeys by Clinton on Epstein's planes. And now remember, Clinton said he was only on the plane 4 times. I only been on it 4 times. What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And even all the way back here in 2015. In Politico, they're talking about at least 10 journeys. And the author is not wrong here. There has always been a political edge to this. Both sides trying to use it as a hatchet job to try and score political points for their side, when in reality, as I've been saying for quite some time now, there are no sides to this, folks. All we have here are a bunch of scumbag elites who don't care about any of us. Never mind these girls and other girls who are exposed to their nonsense. I'd like to know what he was doing with Jeffrey Epstein. How many trips did he take? Where he was going? What did he do when he was with this guy? Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus told Bloomberg in March. When you hang out with a guy who has a reputation like Jeffrey Epstein, multiple times on private jets, on weekends, on trips, on places at least where it's been reported not very good things happen, it would be good to know what our former president was doing, especially because it appears he's going to be part of a campaign ticket on the other side of the aisle. And while I think Reince Priebus is an absolute moron, a water-carrying neocon, even a broken clock is right 2 times a day, the American people have the right to know what Bill Clinton was doing with Jeffrey Epstein. We have plenty of circumstantial evidence, folks. Plenty of it. Last month, conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit demanding all Secret Service records pertaining to the costs of any trips Bill Clinton made to Epstein's private island in the Caribbean. This is what I'm talking about. Do you really think Judicial Watch gives a damn about the survivors, cares about any of those girls, or do they want to use this as a political weapon to bash the Democrats over the head with? It's very apparent and very obvious to anyone who's not eating at the buffet of confirmation bias what's going on here. Spokespeople for Hillary Clinton's campaign, the Clinton Foundation, and Bill Clinton did not respond to requests for comment. A lot smarter than Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew should have taken a page out of Bill Clinton's book when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. Keep your yap shut. Because all of these guys that were hanging out with him are in serious peril. At least one presidential hopeful who has since jumped in the ring on the Republican side was friendly with Epstein. Donald Trump. "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy," Trump told New York Magazine back in 2002. "He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." Yeah, that's not the comment of a creeper. That's not the comment of another degenerate. Look, nobody should be under any delusions that Donald Trump is a moral person. He is not. Okay? Donald Trump is not a moral person. He's not the hero of this story like some on the right are trying to make him out to be. He is another enabler, another person who was close to Jeffrey Epstein, and another person who helped Jeffrey Epstein's reputation and helped him get into that part of society. These are just the facts, folks. I know it's uncomfortable for people who are still carrying water for one side or the other, but we have to get past that shit. Look what it's doing to our nation. Just today, I saw two people that have been friends since childhood, going at it over stupid-ass, dumbass, nonsensical, divisive politics. And I will not be part of that shit. I just won't do it. I'm not doing it. For the past year, I've been seeing how things have turned, and it's disturbing to me. It's very disturbing that we can no longer have proper conversations. The whole point of politics, of détente, is to talk with people you don't agree with. And if we've gotten to a point where that's not going to happen, then I don't even know what to say. We're finished as a society if that's the case, and we're looking at a lot of pain coming down the pipe. I know for my part, I've taken a very clinical approach to this whole entire thing for the past year and been very, very neutral about what has been going on politically as I've been immersed in this Jeffrey Epstein case. But what I will say is the divisiveness has to stop. A Trump associate said Tuesday that Trump wasn't aware of any wrongdoing, that he and Epstein were not particularly close, and he was a member of Trump's clubs where he would visit with women and business associates, but there was no formal relationship, the source close to Trump said. And again, Trump, just like the rest of them, just like with Bill Clinton, it's bullshit, dude. Just own it. Own that you guys were homies. Come forward and talk about what you know. Now, I will say that Trump spoke to Bradley Edwards back in the day when Bradley Edwards was conducting his investigation. But okay, that's great, that's good, it's a good step, no doubt about it. But wishing Ghislaine Maxwell well, and it's just been one misstep after the other when it comes to Epstein with Trump. So I don't know how anyone on the right can try and use Jeffrey Epstein as a cudgel to beat people on the left, and people on the left don't think I've forgotten about you, because guess what? You most certainly can't use this as a weapon against Donald Trump and his people either. Because guess what, folks? There's enough scumbaggery on both sides to go around. And the sooner we accept that, the sooner we'll be to getting to a point where we all understand that these people who have chosen to become career politicians are the real problem behind the scenes. They're the ones that write these laws. They're the ones that wrote all of these laws with all of these loopholes that Dershowitz and company used to get Jeffrey Epstein off. These are these people that we elect. These are the people that are taking money hand over fist from people just like Jeffrey Epstein. And you don't think that they're getting anything in return? People like Epstein are just ponying up dough to these politicians for their health? Of course not. We know it's symbiotic. We have to make sure that the people who are writing these laws understand that the people, the populace, the citizens are no longer going to accept the brazen display of this two-tier justice system that we have seen used countless times against people who do not have means by people who are so-called elite. It has to stop. One justice system for everybody. That needs to be the goal. And the only way we're ever going to get there is if we have politicians that understand that the people will not accept their bullshit any longer. And that goes for both sides of the aisle. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. I will be back tomorrow morning. I hope that everybody had a great night. Until tomorrow, folks,